All right, we're about to dive into a pretty radical idea here. What if the very foundation of modern economics, this concept of scarcity, isn't a law of nature at all? What if it's just a story we've been told, a manufactured idea that literally shapes our entire world? Let's unpack that.
I know that's a huge question, right? But it really forces you to stop and think about this basic assumption that runs everything, from your personal budget all the way up to global markets. I mean, what if there actually is enough for everyone, and the system is just built to make us believe there isn't? So if you crack open any textbook, this is pretty much what you'll find. Economics is all about how we manage limited resources. And that one little phrase, limited resources, well, that's the engine for the whole field. It bakes scarcity into the equation from the very beginning. But what if that starting assumption is the whole problem?
Okay, so here's the explosive counterclaim from the material we're looking at. The argument is that scarcity isn't some inevitable fact of life. It's a strategy. It's a business model. By restricting supply, denying people access, and basically rigging the game, systems can create scarcity out of thin air to drive up prices and make a profit. It totally reframes poverty. It's not about a lack of stuff, it's about a lack of access.
So, to even imagine an alternative, we're going to look at a very, very old story, but through a totally new lens, an economic one. Let's imagine the creation story in Genesis, not as theology for a moment, but as an economic blueprint for a world that starts with abundance, not with lack. What's so wild about this blueprint is its logic. It starts with, just chaos, but the first thing it does isn't ration or divide. It creates something that's infinitely shareable, light. Then it builds infrastructure, introduces resources that are designed to multiply on their own, like seeds. And then it puts humanity in charge, not to extract everything, but to be stewards. And this is crucial. It builds in a brake pedal, the Sabbath, to make sure the whole system doesn't just burn itself out. It's a model built for compounding growth, right from day one.
And this quote, it just perfectly nails the core idea of that original blueprint. The world is presented as a gift that's already full to the brim. The blessing comes before a single person has done any work. The starting assumption is overflow, not emptiness. So, if the original design was all about abundance, what went wrong? Well, the sources we're looking at describe what happened next as a kind of corruption. Like a psychological virus got into the system and completely rewrote its code from abundance to scarcity. And here you can see these two competing mindsets side by side. You can almost think of them like two different operating systems for your brain. The abundance mindset, the good eye, it runs on trust and generosity. It sees the world as a positive-sum game where we can all win. But the scarcity mindset, the bad eye, is totally driven by a fear of not having enough. It sees life as a zero-sum game, which leads to hoarding, competition, and seeing threats around every corner. Now, watch how this virus just cascades through the whole system. Once scarcity takes hold, every single part of the economy gets twisted. Work isn't joyful creation anymore. It's a painful grind just to survive. Land isn't a shared garden. It's something to fight over. Money becomes a weapon for power and hoarding. Debt and anxiety show up on the scene, and the idea of just resting, it gets completely crushed by the pressure to produce. It's a total system meltdown. So this brings us to a really crucial point. According to this worldview, the real root cause of systemic poverty isn't that there's a physical lack of resources on our planet. It's a spiritual and psychological problem. It's a fundamental breakdown of trust that shows up as greed, hoarding, and oppression, which then creates the actual physical poverty we see in the world. But the story doesn't just end there with a diagnosis. The ancient texts didn't just point out the problem, they actually proposed solutions. And you can think of these as really sophisticated firewalls or system patches designed to actively fight that scarcity virus and contain the damage caused by greed.
And just look at how systematic these are. The Sabbath isn't just a day off, it's an economic handbrake on endless production. Gleaning laws basically hard code generosity into the system. And then you have the Sabbath and Jubilee years, which are these radical economic reset buttons. Every 7 years, poof, all debts are gone. And every 50 years, all land goes back to its original owners. This stuff was designed to stop permanent poverty in its tracks and prevent wealth from getting locked up by just a few people.
And the stakes for ignoring these rules, they were incredibly high. This line from the prophet Amos is just this blistering takedown of an economy that had lost its way. An economy where human beings were worth less than a pair of shoes. It shows you that economic injustice wasn't just a policy problem. It was seen as a deep, profound moral and spiritual crisis. So what do we do with all this today? Let's switch gears and look at a really powerful, practical way to reboot our own thinking.
It's all about shifting from a slices mentality to a seeds mentality. It's about rebooting to that abundance operating system.
This right here is the absolute game changer. Division thinking sees the world as a fixed pie. There's only so much to go around, so the only question is how we slice it up. It's a zero-sum game. But multiplication thinking sees value as a seed. The work isn't to ration what you have, it's to plant it, nurture it, and watch it grow. The whole question changes from how do we divide this to how do we multiply this?
And here's the simple logic behind it. We basically create scarcity on purpose when we put fences around things that are naturally abundant. Think about it. A rival good is like a piece of pizza. If I eat it, you can't. It's gone. But a non-rival good is like an idea or a piece of code. We can both use it, and it doesn't get used up. When we start hoarding and rationing non-rival goods, we're choosing scarcity where there could be abundance. So what kind of seeds can we plant? Well, here are 5 super reliable multipliers. Information. You write one playbook, it can train thousands. Tools. You build one platform, it can multiply the work of millions. Trust, energy, and well-designed institutions, they all work the same way. They create the conditions for value to just compound and grow for everybody. You know, the story of feeding the 5,000 is the perfect picture of this whole idea. The situation starts with classic scarcity thinking. Hey, we've only got 5 loaves and 2 fish. There's no way that's enough. But then, through generosity, coordination, and everyone participating, that not enough is totally transformed into a surplus with leftovers. It's a perfect practical demo of multiplication in action. And so that's the question I want to leave you with. It's a question you can take and apply to literally any situation, at your job, in your community, on your projects. Anytime you're faced with what looks like a problem of division, a problem of scarcity, just stop and ask yourself, what's the seed here? What's the one thing that if we multiplied it would make this entire argument about slicing the pie completely unnecessary? That is the shift from scarcity to abundance.